Alright, so now for this thing, we are going to have two types of users. One is going to be admin who can create these quizzes. Then other one, a simple user, we could say students, so they can register themselves. Then user, the admin user will approve those users, and then those users can enter into the application and they can see all the available quizzes, and then they can give some quiz or take some quiz. Okay, yeah, let's start working on these lines only. So first thing, in our API projects, we are going to have our data access layer, a data layer, all the database layer in this API project only. Okay, so for this, first thing what I'll do, I'll simply add couple of NuGet packages for our data access, of course. So we are going to use entity framework core code first approach. Let's try to download entity, install entity framework core.sql server, and you are free to use any other provider, maybe Postgres or whatever. Install it, apply, accept, and after the SQL server, we are going to use entity framework core.tools to have our migrations. So efcore.tools, install, apply, accept, and we are done. Okay, all right. Now inside this project, this API only, I'm going to create a folder named data. Inside this, I'm going to create a folder entities, and then I'm going to create our entities here. So first, I will have user entity. Let me zoom it. So in this user entity, we are going to have first, we need one ID, then we need one name, then we need maybe email, then we can have phone, then we can have password, but we are not going to store plain password in this. We are going to store hashed password in this. So let's call it password hash. And I guess we are good. Then we need to have one role. So for this, we have couple of different approaches, because this particular application, it is going to have just two user roles. One is student, one is admin. So we can maybe directly have those here. Maybe we can have just an enum, and but we can, if we have multiple roles, then we might introduce one table for that if we want to. But it's, the design is totally up to you. It depends on what how complex your role system is. Okay, so for this case, what we can do, we can simply have the simple, I can simply have a enum here. So for that, what I'll do, I'll go to shared project. Okay, because now this enum can be referenced from other projects as well. So this is kind of a common thing, shared thing. So I'll go to shared project. In my shared project, I'm going to create a new class which will change. Here we'll say user role. Okay, and let's make it public enum. Okay, enum, and here we'll say simple. One is admin and another is student. That's all we are going to do. And in here, we are going to have just string role with the default value as, because for admin, we will introduce, or we'll have admin user as a initial seed data. But after that, whatever registration we are doing, those are going to be of student role by default. We can change that logic, but default will be the student role. So here we can simply say name of user role dot student is the default. Okay, now let's try to add data annotations. So this ID, this is going to be key, then name. This is going to be required, but because we are using nullable type, so by default it is required. But here we'll simply say max length for name is, it should not be more than 20. Then on email, let's say max length should not be more than 150. For phone, let's say we will apply length, so minimum 10, maximum 15. I don't know what in India right now we have 10 digit numbers, so it might vary by country. So if in your country this range is something else, you can free to modify this. Then this password hash, it can be a very long hashed string, so let's have 250 characters. Role, we know that this is the student 2468, so let's maybe have it as max length as 15, not more than. All right, so we have our user entity ready. Now let's create new entity. Now this time, this class, we are going to have these math, history, biology. So these are subjects, but we'll consider these as categories. Okay, so let's call these categories. We are going to have one category table here. Okay, category entity. Here we are going to have ID and name. Okay, ID will be key, primary key, and then this name, we will have simple max length of, let's say, not more than 50. All right, now let's create one more. This time this thing will be let's say quiz, but quiz will have questions and questions will have answers. So we are going to have three different entities for one quiz. Okay, so let's do this. Yeah, let's have this quiz.cs in here only. First, we'll have one quiz. Let's have some ID. So let's say I'm using GUID for this, so ID. Then we can have name this quiz if we want to. Then maybe we can have number of questions. So let's say total questions. And then we might want to add some time limit to this. So we'll have int time in minutes. And I guess we are good. And then we can have when this quiz was created. If we want to track that, we can. And let's just have a boolean if this quiz is active or not. Now one quiz will belong to one category. Okay, so in this top only, maybe after name, let's have one category ID. Okay, now because this is category ID, we need to have the navigation property here to define that relationship. So here we'll have this as a category and we'll make it virtual, allowing it to lazy loading functionality. And for this, although the foreign keys default this category and category ID, the naming convention is correct, but let's explicitly specify it. So in this case, if we'll remove it, it will work same. So this foreign key property, this helps us. For example, let's say the name of this field was not category ID. Maybe we were having this cat ID. In this case, this EF core needs to know how the relationship is this between these quiz and category entity. So for that, we must have specified this. Now it will know, okay, for this category, the one end is the category ID, which we have there. And in this end, in this quiz table, quiz entity, this end called cat ID. So this belongs to this category. So this is going to be this foreign key. Okay, let's move it back to category ID and we are good. Now this quiz is going to have some questions. So for that, let's create a class here, question. Now first we'll have question ID. Then we are going to have question text. Okay. Now this question, this should be part of some quiz. Okay, so this quiz here we are going to have, I have this GUID. Yeah, let's have it GUID only. Here we'll say that this is quiz ID, and now because this quiz ID, this will act as a reference between these two tables. So this is going to be a foreign key. So here we'll use this navigation property. So we'll say public quiz and we'll name it quiz with same foreign key name of quiz ID, and we'll make it virtual. Okay, now we have our question. So in our quiz, we can define that this quiz will have a list of questions. So here we'll say I collection of question, and we'll call it questions with a default value as empty array. This collection expression, not array, just empty collection. All right. Now here we have this question. Now one question will have multiple options. Okay, because this is going to be a multiple choice quiz. We will have multiple options to choose from for the correct answer. So for this, we are going to have this one more entity, public class, let's say option. All right. And here we are going to have first ID. Second, we are going to have question ID, that what question this option belongs to. Okay. Now, when we have this question ID, we need to have navigation property here. So let's create that navigation property. That is going to be this question. Name will be just question. And we can have our foreign key as name of question ID, and let's make it virtual. All right. Now this option, it will have text, option text. Now inside this, when admin is creating this quiz, adding this question, at that time, he or she will have an option to define that this option is the correct answer. So that after completing the quiz, the student can see the result, how many number of questions he or she has given the correct answer. We'll have one boolean flag here. We'll say is correct, right? Now let's, these three belongs here. So we have this question. Now this question, yeah, this question will have list of options. Here we'll define public I collection option. We'll call these options only, and here it will have same virtual. All right, now all these entities are ready. Let's add data annotations. So this key, this quiz ID is going to be key, then name, quiz name. On this we'll have some max length. Yeah, 100 is fine. Category ID, all these things are okay. We are good with this. Cool. Then question, in question, this ID will be key, primary key. Then this text, we'll have a max length of, or maybe let's leave it. We are not going to have any max length for questions. It can be any longer, or maybe if we want to have strict design UI. So for example, this UI looks very good. So let's restrict the number of characters or this text length. Let's do this, yeah. For option also. So let's do this. So for text, we'll say max length of, it should not be more than maybe 200 or 2, yeah, 250 is, 250 is enough. All right. Then we have option here. This ID is key. Then question ID, this is fine. And this text here also will say max length, and let's use 200, not more than 200. Cool. So these are ready. Let's move these to their separate files. Quiz is fine. Now on this question, we'll move type to question.cs separate file. Option also to a separate file. Cool. Now these are fine. We are okay with all these. Now next thing we will have, this is the initial setup that we have admin user now. We have students. We have quiz, questions and options. Now when the student comes to attempt any quiz, then we need to store the progress and all that stuff there. The what was the quiz student attempted to, what all questions were served, what was the selected option the user has selected. So for all these we are going to have some student related entities. Okay, so in here in this entities only, let's create maybe student quiz. Okay, here we will have id specific to this table. Then we are going to have quiz id, which was the quiz student has attempted, and before that we are going to have student id. Okay, now because the student id, this belongs to user table, this quiz id belongs to quiz table. So let's set the navigation properties here. First for student id, now this is a good candidate for this thing, this user. So foreign key, here we will define the type is user, should have been user id, but in our context this user, with reference to this student quiz, within this context this user is actually student. Okay, so here we'll define foreign key, name of student id. All right, and this should be virtual. Then for quiz, we'll have quiz as a navigation property here, foreign key, name of quiz id and virtual. Okay, now this is the id specific to this. Let's add that key, this student attempting this quiz. We are good with this, so far so good. But now when did student attempted this quiz, so we'll have that thing here. So let's say date time attempted on, or maybe started on. Let's do this, started on. Okay, then when did student completed this, we'll have date time completed on. Then we can have the score. Okay, so if there were, let's say 10 questions in that quiz. Okay, and user has attempted all 10 questions and user scored 8 out of 10. 8 questions were correct. For that we can simply have a total score here, total marks, or maybe, yeah, let's just say score. Okay, it is going to be int because we are right now having these as simple number of questions, so each question has 1 marks, we could say. So this will simply have the how many number of questions student has given correct answer to. All right, now this is student quiz, so now we will have student quiz questions. What were the questions and what was the correct answer student has given for any particular question. But we are okay if you don't want to show the history. When I say history, the details, that okay, right now using this it will have the default thing ready, so it can simply show that this was the quiz. Under this category there were 10 questions, you attempted it on this date at this time, you gave 8 correct answers, and you completed this quiz at this date or this time. So that's all. If we want to further show the actual details or all the questions, that okay, this was the question, these were the options, the correct option was this, but you have chosen this. If you want to show this, then we will have other tables as well in this particular. So let's do this. I'm not going to have other tables in here, but do let me know in the comment if you guys want a follow video for this, and if I got good response on this, then I will try to extend this by providing the detailed uh, stats on each question. For this particular case, what we can do, maybe when user is selecting the response, at that time only, the way it is showing here, that it will right away show if this was correct or not, right? We can follow this approach. Yeah, this approach makes sense, right? We are making this simple application, so this approach makes sense. So let's stick with this only. We'll do this only. So we are good with the student quiz here, and with this I guess entities are ready. We'll see if we need any other entity later on, but right now these are the entities which I can think of. All right, now we need a database context after this. So inside this data folder only, I'm going to create a new class, say quiz context. Okay, and to make it as a entity framework core database context, DbContext, it should be a subclass of DbContext. Okay, let's define its constructor, this options constructor, with providing this quiz context as this generic type for this, so that it can simply cache it. All right, now here we'll have all our entities as db sets. Okay, so define this db set category, property name categories. All right, let's copy it a couple of times. Then next is options. Then next is questions. Then next is quiz. Then this will be quizzes. Then next is student quizzes. Then comes user and user. Okay, then we can override on configuring. If we want to add something, we can add here. Then we can override on model creating as well, if we want to further define some additional rules on these category or on these entities if we want to. But right now all our entities are fine, we are good, we don't have any complex relationship and all those things here, so we should be good, right? We are okay with this, all these things. All right, but we will ship our use this application with one admin user. So for that admin user, we need to seed that admin user. For that, what we can do, we can maybe add that as a initial startup, or maybe we can directly seed that in this quiz context. So here in on model creating, here what we can do, we can simply say var admin user equals, okay, here we can have user defined here. We'll say user, and we can simply have name as admin user. For me, I'm going to use my name, Abhay Prince. Then email, it could be anything, abcd, or let's say admin@gmail.com. Then id one, when we seed data, we need to provide id as well. Then we'll have this phone, it can be anything, so 123456798 Then we have role, so this role should be, for us it should be user role.admin. And then we have this password hash, so we need some password hash here. So what we can use we can inject something. We can use ASP.NET Core identities iPassword hasher here. So this iPassword hasher of some type, let's say password hasher. Okay, we are injecting is here, and we can say here, let's define this admin user is here. Then we'll simply say what, not what, let's say admin user dot password hash equals this password hasher dot hash password. Then we can provide this user, and the second parameter is password, plain password, so it can be anything. For me, let's have it 1234566, this very complex and very unique password 1234566. All right, now our admin user is ready. I'm having this hard coded here only. You can maybe try to move it to some initial starting setup. Maybe you can have this seeding as a method or as some seed class, and you can run it on the application startup. Okay, and maybe if you are doing this here also, you can have these initial things from the environment variables or app settings. So from anywhere using I configuration, you can simply inject I configuration and you can fetch all these things from there. So that is also an option, but for this particular thing, I'm just keeping it simple. Okay, now we have our admin user ready. We will simply, we don't have any, we should have anything else, right? We don't have is active or something like that in user. I didn't add it. We should have that because the way we have uh, envisioned this, so admin user will have here, but after that student will register here, but they will not be directly able to access anything. Admin has to verify and tell them, okay, this student belongs to this app, this student belongs to us, and then we'll approve that. And then because the application, it will be public, the UI, the web part, it will be public, so anyone can go and register themselves. So we are not directly allowing anyone. So in that case, the user will be awaiting approval from the admin user. That's what we are going to do. So in this thing, we can have one more field where we'll say is approved. Okay, you can extend, you can have is active, is deleted, and a lot of things. You can have all other audit fields as well. Maybe registered at or created at, created by, modified at, modified at. But you can extend it whatever extent you want, but for me, I'm okay with this. So this admin user for this is approved will be true. All right, now we'll simply seed this user into the database. We'll say model builder dot entity, this user, this has data, this admin user. Now we have added this initial data, right? Looks like we are good. Our database is ready, our entities are ready. Now we just need to create migrations for our database. But before that, let's have connection string and let's register this quiz context in startup in program.cs. And after that, we'll run migrations. Okay, so let's go to app settings or maybe app settings.development.json. Here, I'm simply going to have connection string. Here, we are going to have this name is up to you. You can name it whatever you want. Let's have the connection string. I'm adding my connection string. You are free to use your own. Okay, so data source dot initial catalog, which is database name. Let's say blazing quiz, and then integrated security true, because for me I'm using Windows authentication. And then we'll have encrypt to false. I don't want this to encrypt this, and we are good. Let's now register this quiz context in our program.cs. So in here, before builder.build, we'll say builder.services.add DbContext. We'll define the type, which is quiz context. Inside this, we are going to have options. Options, we can say options dot use SQL server, and in here we can provide our connection string. Okay, so connection string, we can simply say var connection string equals, we can get builder.configuration.get connection string, and we need to provide the exact name we are using in our app settings. So this name is quiz, so we'll use this only, this quiz. Now here is our connection string. Now we can use this connection string here, and we are good. Now our registration is also ready. Sorry. Now we can create our migrations. Now I want my migrations inside this data folder only, because all the database related stuff, this DbContext, entities, migration, all these things I need inside data only. And that those migration are going to be part of this API project only. So first thing, let's set this API project as a startup project. Then let's open package manager console. You can go to tools, and from here also you can open new got package manager and package manager console. Okay, and here this default project, let's change it to API project only, because in API project we have our uh, DbContext. Okay, here we'll simply say add migration. Now the name is up to you, you can name it whatever you want, but we mostly use initial migration. So initial migration, or just initial is good. Now by default it will simply create a folder on the root in API project named migrations, but that is not what we want. Sorry, we want this inside data folder, so we'll explicitly define the output folder, so hyphen o, then we'll say you should output this inside data in migrations folder. Okay, this migrations folder does not exist yet, but this command will check and then create a folder for us. So let's press enter and let's see. It will first build this project, and then it will start the migration. Build succeeded, and we have some error. Let's see what it is. Unable to create DbContext of type this, exception able to resolve service of type DbContext options, quiz context. It is not able to, because okay, I got it. So okay, do let me in the comment if you guys figure out what the problem is. Okay, what is the issue? It, why can't it create instance of quiz context? Okay, pause the video, maybe drop the answer in the comment box, and then continue the video to check if we are on the same page, right? Okay, so we'll go to quiz context. In here, this thing, we are injecting DbContext options. It will be taken care by entity framework core, and when we are doing this add DbContext, it will be taken care by this line. But when we are creating this, we are injecting this I password hasher as well, but there is no registration for this. We need to explicitly register this I password hasher in our program.cs. Alright, what we'll do in here, the order does not matter. Before builder.build, when we are registering our services, then it can be at any order. There is no point of any ordering. Here we'll say builder.services dot, we can simply say add transient I password hasher of user, right? This was the type. For this, we will say password hasher. It also comes from the same ASP.NET package. And we'll inject this. We'll register this. Now we should be good. Open package manager console again. Clean this up. And run the migration again. Add migration basically. Let's see what happens this time. Build succeeded. And boom. We are good. There's no error. Let's quickly verify this. So in migration, first let's see. In data, we have this migrations folder. So it has generated migrations at the correct place where we wanted. Alright, now in this thing, we'll say create table categories. It is creating ID and name. We are good with primary key. Then we have users table with ID, name, email, phone, password, hash, role is approved, full with primary key this. Then we have quizzes, all these things. It has primary key and then it has a foreign key with category. We are okay. After that, we have questions, ID text quiz ID. ID as primary key and it has foreign key with quiz ID. All right. Then we have student quizzes, ID, student ID, quiz ID, started on, completed on, score. And then we have this primary key as ID, then foreign key with quiz ID and student ID. Cool. Then we have options table. So ID, question ID, text correct, primary key and one foreign key. Then insert data. So it is inserting this data in this user table with this admin web prince and this admin user basically with this password hash. All right. Then create, it is creating index on these columns which are being used reference as the foreign key references. So to speed up the things, it is creating these indexes and we are okay with all these migrations. So we are good. Now we can just run this migration manually here, or we can simply have some automatic logic which will run these migrations. Okay, so it is up to us. Maybe in program.cs, let's quickly work on this. Let's create this dynamic thing. In program.cs, we'll simply remove this weather forecast related stuff which comes by default. So let's remove all these things and we are okay. Now let's quickly create a static void method where we'll say apply db migrations. Okay, here we can say simply I service provider sp, and in here we can simply say word scope equals sp dot create scope. Then we will have our DbContext here. So we'll say context equals from this sp get required service of quiz context. We need this. So now we have this context. On this context, we'll say context dot database dot get pending migrations dot any. If there is any pending migration, we want to run those migration against the database. So here we'll say context dot database dot migrate. If that's not the case, we'll simply continue from here. Now we'll simply call this method before this app dot, and we'll simply provide app dot services as a parameter. Now we are good. We can have it here, or maybe we can have it at the very top after this builder dot build, because here we have our app. Okay, now this is not a good idea to do when we are in production mode, so it should be only in development mode. Okay, so we can have that condition here. Maybe we can simply have if this is in debug mode, then only do this, else don't do this. Okay, right now we are in debug mode, so it will simply run this. And looks like we are good. Save everything. Let's quickly try to run this. And maybe we can have a breakpoint here if we want to. Let's run this. And breakpoint got hit here. We are here. Cannot resolve scoped service from root provider. Okay, because this is scoped service and we made a mistake here, we have this scope, right? So from this scope we need to get it, but we are directly getting in this root service provider. So we don't need, we shouldn't do this. So we'll should do scope dot service provider dot get required service. That's why we created this scope, right? So that we can simply resolve the scoped service. DbContext by default gets registered as a scoped service. I'm running it again. Okay, it is here. This time it should work. Yes, pending migrations. Yes, we have. Then it will simply migrate the database. If we open up output window, we can see, I don't know if you guys can see it. There are these SQL queries. Maybe I can pull up this console window here. So you will see it is actually running all those migrations. Okay, it is create table user, create table quizzes on all these things. After this, it is insert into this user value, all that hash and all that thing. So it has created this thing for us. Now if we continue, we are good. Our API is ready and running. There are no endpoints yet, so it will not show anything, but it is running. Let's quickly try it again. This time it should not come inside this if condition, because now we don't have any pending migration. So you see, it came directly out of this, and now we are good. All right. So our entities, DbContext, data migration, database side of things are ready. Now we'll simply can continue working on it.